Welcome back to the Valley to Peak Nutrition Podcast. This week, I'm joined by Brian Barney. Brian is a name many of you will be familiar with, but a handful of you may not be. As you'll hear about, Brian is a passionate bow hunter who has made great contributions to that community over the last 20 years and become one of the most leading experts in the topic. As you might imagine, a guy who spends that much time in the field has learned a ton of lessons. These lessons weren't just about bow hunting. In fact, Brian and I talk very little about bow hunting in our podcast. I was more interested in hearing how he's approached his nutrition in the field, especially when water sources are pretty rare in the earlier parts of the season, how to find water on maps, and how to fit in time for training amidst working a full-time job, hosting his own podcast, raising a family, and being a husband. As we talked, I kept hearing this reoccurring theme. It was operating optimally on nothing more than the bare minimums. Minimum time, minimum intel, minimum resources, yet still figuring out a way to make it work. I couldn't think of a better person to invite on the podcast to learn from. Plus, he's one of the genuinely best dudes on the planet. You'll hear us cover a variety of topics, one of which is about functioning on water minimums whenever water is scarce. Brian references it in the podcast, but neither of us are recommending this, suggesting it's good, giving medical advice, or anything of that nature. It's intended to be lessons on what he's learned from just being in the backcountry through the years. With that point made, let's jump in and learn how to operate optimally with nothing more than the bare minimums with Brian Barney. All right. Well, I'm sure that there is a vast, large percentage of people that listen to this who are very familiar with who you are. But I think a great place to start would just be introduction for people who maybe aren't. Kind of introduce who you are, what you do, and we'll take it from there.
Yeah, so my name's Brian Barney. I live in Ennis, Montana. I'm a bow hunter through and through. I work at Eastman's, run a podcast there, a couple podcasts there, some filming and some writing, and have been doing that for the last 15 years or so, and bow hunting about the last 25 years. So that's kind of the short synopsis of me and who I am.
Yeah, so we ran into each other in Bozeman at the Mountain of Tough event and kind of got to talk a little bit and gave you a little preface into this. And I know you like usually when you're on podcasts, you talk bow hunting, which is great. And obviously this bleeds into that. But one of the reasons that I thought this would be such a cool podcast is because, and I kind of referenced this whenever we ran into each other, I can't remember if it was on one of your podcasts or if you were a guest on another podcast, but I remember you sort of tapping into, or someone had asked the question about like your nutrition and water, particularly on early hunts, right? And how you have kind of come to hone in on what you can get by with as far as bare minimums are, like bare minimums for water per day, bare minimums of calories per day. It's just like you're so honed in that you understand that. So a big question that I initially had when I reached out was I just wanted to learn more about it. And one thing was how your planning changes in a situation like that. Like how does your planning change as far as maybe what you bring or how you come up with those bare minimums, how you space them out, and just what it looks like whenever you're stuck up high for a number of days, you don't want to drop down for water, and how you stay hydrated and do all that.
Yeah. Yeah. What a great question. Yeah. I'm glad that you found interest in it. I caught a bit of flack of like how much water I need, and everybody's individuals. And, like I'm not that big of a guy. I'm like 5'7", 160 or something like that. And really, I got dialed into hydration and what I needed in minimums, like through wrestling throughout all the years is like, we would lose water weight to try to make weight, and it makes you stronger at that weight because you're able to, weigh more after you weigh in and then wrestle a lower weight. And so I got dialed into it there, but, I just don't need much water. And it's wild, man. It's like, I train without water. I work out in the heat without water, and then I'll just drink water, at morning or at night. And so I really don't need as much as like the normal or the average guy. And I just do a lot of heat training. Like unless I'm going on a 12-mile run, I don't bring any water with me. If it's shorter than 12 miles, I don't need to drink or anything until I get back to the truck. But, it is important to stress that like hydration and heat stroke are things that can kill you. So it's like not something that you can mess around with too much. Like you have to know your body and know your needs and make sure you're doing it safely. And so like in hunting, where it came into to play is like for high country mule deer. So high country mule deer, they don't need water every day. In fact, they get a lot of water from their food source or from the dew on the grass. And so I very rarely see muleys drink water. It's not like elk that need water at least once a day, if not twice a day. And most of the time they live or reside around water. Muleys do not. So muleys can live in a totally different habitat above the water source, above tree line, up in these alpine basins. And so the advantage came is like anybody with stock needs to park their horses, their mules by water so their mules and horses can drink. Also, somebody that's hunting up there, they're not tapped into or dialed into their water. And so what happens is they fill up a Nalgene with 32 ounces of water. They hike to the top of the mountain, they run out of water and have to come down. And so where my advantage came is like hunting these muleys, I could pack enough water to be able to survive multiple days up on top where these muleys are. Or I could hunt, like there's one spot in Nevada where there's 10 miles of ridgeline that doesn't have any water, and I could pack my water and be in the middle of that and get away from all the hunting pressure and be into a bunch of muleys. So I started to dial in what my needs were for water. Now, I work construction and work in the heat. And like I say, I don't really drink throughout the day. I don't really drink on my runs. Do a lot of sauna training without water. And I make sure I'm hydrated. And I don't know if I just need less than the average person, but I've figured out like, I can get by on 32 ounces of water a day. Now, this all depends on the humidity, the temperature, the exertion level. But I've figured out that I can live off 32 ounces a day. And then about every 3 days, when I fill up my water, I'm really going to hydrate. Now, if I'm really like, if it's good living, if I'm hydrating, if I have big exertion, if I'm cooking some meals and that, 50 ounces a day is almost a better rule, where 32 ounces is a bare minimum. And, like you start to feel it in your body, you start to feel dry mouth. I mean, when you're dehydrated, the only thing you want or think about is water, And so you can start to dial into it, just like you'll start to get headaches if you get low on water. You're going to start to get dry mouth, dry lips. You're going to start to feel it in your body. And obviously, we want optimal performance. But I've just figured out that where these muleys live, like I can really tap in to this low water source and be able to survive up there. So for me, 32 ounces to 50 ounces a day. And some of the adjustments I'll make is if I know that I'm going into a low water area, like last year, it's 3,000 feet to the top of the mountain and there is no water up there. And so I know I have to pack all my water, and water is extremely heavy. Every 16 ounces is a pound. So like, 50 ounces, like you're packing, 2.5 pounds of water per day that you need. And so, 100 ounces of water, like you're talking 8 pounds of water that you're packing on you. And so a lot of times when I'm packing in, I try to figure out, 132 ounces, 160 ounces, somewhere in there where I can get 3 days on the mountain. And then another thing I'll do is I won't cook food, or I won't use food that uses water. I'll go all dry foods. And then I can also save some weight not bringing a stove in. And these dry foods that don't need the water, as much water, that'll save me some as well. So yeah, I hope that makes sense without people pushing too hard or pushing the edge too far, because it can be really dangerous and people do die from dehydration or heat stroke. So it's important to know your body.
Yeah, I mean, I love that you include that factor as like the safety component of it, because it's intriguing, right? I think any human feat that is beyond common is just phenomenal to watch, right? Like Tough Fest, for example, you watch all of these people pushing their bodies all day. It's just awesome to watch. And so, yeah, I love that you highlight the safety piece of it and say, this is what I've found, although I'm not necessarily suggesting it. And one of the things that I had the most interest in is part two of that question that I'll bleed into next. But you were talking about doing sauna training and doing heat training, and we've had some folks from Uphill Athlete, which kind of create training programs for folks who go into the mountains, on before, where we talk specifically about that, especially training for altitude, the value of sauna training to help your body accommodate to heat and to be able to perform optimally, even if you don't have exposure to heat, and even what that does as far as acclimating prior to getting to, a trailhead that may be at a higher elevation than you're used to. Here's the question I have, because I'll get hate mail if I don't ask you this. When you say, I tend to take dry food, I tend to take these foods that don't require rehydration, that was one of the things that piqued my mind, right? Because usually you have people like taking water that are drinking 2 or 3 coffees a day. They're generally heating up oatmeal for breakfast. They're more than likely eating some sort of a rehydrated meal in the evenings. What do you take to eat in a situation like that where you don't have a stove, as far as those like main meals where most people tend to think that they need water?
Yeah, so the main meals, like I can just get through with doing, like, I have, some foods that I like that I'll use. I mean, and also like minimal water too. There's some dehydrated meals that take less water than some of the hydrated ones. But yeah, I mean, I can ditch my stove and bring a few more ounces. Like, I love like putting together granola and dried fruit and a little bit of powdered milk, and just like 4 ounces of water in that thing will get me through. I love salami and cheese and crackers. That can be a meal for me. I love like I'll do bagels, and I can either do peanut butter and jelly on them, or I can do like that salami and cheese on them. So I'll run that. I'll run a excuse me, I'll run a tortilla, and I do like a lot of my own jerky, so it's all off wild venison. And then before season, I'll run a bunch of that jerky, and so I can pretty much survive off fruit leathers and jerky and nuts and trail mix. And two, when I'm doing these trips, when I'm not bringing a stove or I'm trying to go dry foods, usually it's going to be a shorter assault. It's not going to be 10 days. If I'm 10 days, I'm going to mix in some dehydrated foods. I'll cook some meals once I get down to water, or the day I fill up. I'll mix and match and do a couple dry days and then do a day where I rehydrate meals. But I think it's also like being cognizant of like how much these meals take. And a lot of these meals are like more food than we can consume and take a ton of water, 16 ounces of water, 20 ounces of water. And so you can get some that take less. I mean, other things that I do are little tricks, like I run a noodle dish, and then I'll have dehydrated my jerky, which is cut into smaller pieces, which is pretty much like rehydrated venison. And then I also run like broccoli and peppers in there that are all dehydrated. It's in a vacuum sealed deal. And then, I can either cook up a little rice or cook up a little noodles with real minimal water. We're talking 4 to 6 ounces. And then I can have that as a rice bowl, or I can throw all that in a tortilla and have that. Or I do like a noodle dish, and I bring like a little bit of like a General Tso's seasoning that I'll put in on it with the noodles and venison and broccoli and peppers and things. So I just do a lot of my own meals, and I'm real cognizant not to pack too much. So I'm not burning 16 or 20 ounces of water. I'm using 4 to 6 ounces of water, and then rehydrating those meals is a lot of the food that I try to do.
Yeah, we started dehydrating all of our own meals a handful of years ago too, and I've found the same thing in terms of they just don't take near the volume of water to rehydrate as some of like the freeze dried stuff that you see. So I have two kind of additional questions that spin off of this. One, the first one I guess would be whenever we chatted in Bozeman, and you had referenced a hunt, and so I went back and I watched some of the old Eastman hunts that you're on. I watched all of them because I don't know, I just love watching them. There was a hunt that you were on in Nevada where there was a situation like this: zero water anywhere, but you had found a really small spring up high, just a spring out of the side of the mountain that was just like, it looked like it had just enough flow to get what you needed, but certainly wasn't like a fire hose coming out of the side of the mountain. Is there, like, I would imagine that one, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, that's the type of spring that you only find by being there and wandering around and being there. Is there anything though that you're looking at on aerial imagery to see where there could be potential water sources up high? if you're on Onyx or Go Hunt or Map du Jour, is there anything that you're looking specifically for on that aerial imagery to say, this looks like it could at least be worth checking out?
Yeah, 100%. Like this is something that you have to map out, especially with high country mule deer. Like a lot of these places I go are unexplored. Like I don't know what I'm going into. And so my rule of thumb is I always want to have enough water when I'm going to someplace new. So I'll have 100 ounces of water, 130 ounces of water. So I know that I can work this ridge line and find water. And a lot of it, like you said, is boots to ground. But what I am looking for is I'm looking for lakes, I'm looking for ponds, I'm looking for things that I can see on Google Earth, and then I'm marking those as water sources because I might be 7 miles or 10 miles to the next water source. So I want to know where this is. And especially if I get into an emergency scenario, or like just to know that I don't have to pack 130 ounces. I know there's a pond at the top that sits 1,000 feet from the top where I know I can go there and then I can fill up my 130 ounces. So now I'm not hiking up with 11 pounds of water. I'm hiking up with 2.5 pounds of water and then I'm filling up at that spot. So I'm going to have more energy to make it to the top. So I'm definitely like strategically marking these water sources and where I can find them, also where I can fill up. And then I am looking for those neon green seeps, those places where it's like, man, that is a lot greener when I look in August or when I look in September and it's all the brown grass. And it's like, gosh, there's some like willows in there, and willows are going to point you into grass. Green foliage is going to point you into, or I'm sorry, willows will point you to water. Also, green grass will point you to water. And so, I'm kind of looking for some of these neon green features and maybe zooming in, and I won't know because a lot of times these springs, they're sporadic. Like they're not every year that they're going to have water, especially some of these smaller seeps. And so I can't really count on it, but I will mark it as like a possible water source. They're like, oh, I need to look at this a little bit closer when I'm in there. And then when I'm up there, I'm always glassing down for running water and all the draws in and through there. I'm glassing for the willows, for the aspens, things of that nature where there may be possibly water there. And it's not as big a deal to go down 500 feet to grab water or 1,000 feet to grab water. It's a much bigger deal to have to go down 2,500 feet or go back to the truck. So definitely marking these strategic water sources on the hunt I'm going on.
How does this all change if you find yourself in an entirely different situation, like a late season hunt? It's cold. What about your food from early season changes maybe to late season, if anything?
Yeah, so definitely late season I can throw more temperamental food in. Like I can make myself a sandwich or two that's going to keep. I can bring in meat, I can bring in cheese, and I can always get like cheese sticks or whatever to last when it's early season, but I can just bring more of that food that isn't going to go bad, that's going to help. I also tend to not use as much water because I'm not as hot, I'm not sweating out as much, and so I can cut my water down a little bit in the late season. I do have some really dry spots where there is zero water that I backpack into to hunt deer in the late season, and I don't know where these deer are getting their water from back in there. I guess I have found some springs, but not really fillable for any of my water back in there. Also, like maybe cattle troughs that just have a little bit of water left in them, which I don't really fill my water there at a cattle trough or at a like drinking station for cattle or something like that. But yeah, I think in the late season I can bring less water. I don't need quite as much. I still go by that rule of at least 32 to 50 ounces a day. Yeah, and I think I can just bring more perishable food with me, whatever sounds good. I can bring, like if I had a leftover burrito or even a burrito on the way, I can throw that in for the next day. And a lot of this too is like, it's like on the mental side of things. It's just like feeling human back there. It's when you're starving yourself or you don't have water or lack thereof, it makes it a little bit more miserable and you're suffering a little bit more. And so as I get into that late season, I'm doing a combination of truck camping where I do have a cooler, where I do have good food that I'm cooking every night. And then I'll backpack in and I'll do 2, 3 days. But I've already been backpacking for the entire early season. Like I'm burned out of dehydrated meals, I'm burned out of granola. And so, like, sometimes in the late season, like just to be able to have like a burrito in my pack that's like a good meal for the next day that I know is going to keep is like, going to keep me going or keep me like looking forward to something that next day and keep me rolling. So a bit of it is just making myself feel human. And then in that late season too, like early season, if I'm really conserving water, I'm not having my coffee in the morning, which, I don't want to give myself headaches or anything like that. It's definitely nice to have a cup of coffee, but I will cut that out because it does dehydrate me even further and just go with water. And so late season when it's a little bit colder, I'm going to have that cup of coffee in the morning because I don't need as much water throughout the day. Plus, it warms me up, makes me feel human again. And that caffeine, it's a bit of a creature comfort as well, where it makes me feel human again, where it doesn't feel like I'm suffering quite as bad. And then I can kind of hunt harder, or my mental attitude, like I'm just clearer and more focused on the goal and on the mission, and not so beat up, if that makes sense.
There are times where, like, if I've got 5 to 7 days of food, I'll take 1 or 2 days and throw an extra bar in there. And man, if I get to day 4 and know that I've not pulled that out yet, and I still know it's in there, I just get so excited on the day I pull that thing out. It's like one more bar or an extra thing of coffee or whatever. It is a morale booster. I think that's good advice. So the other piece that I was interested in, as I was thinking about, like, yeah, I just had these collection of ideas and thought, man, he would be such a good guest to come on. So thank you for being here. I really do appreciate it. The second piece was the training component of your life, right? Outside of the backcountry. And again, just listening to you on various podcasts and listening to you like on Cam's podcast and sort of talking about how you are like us. You have a job, you have kids, you have family, you have, the bow hunting Eastman's component of your life. You're as busy as anybody is. Yet the training piece, the nutrition piece, the day-to-day stuff to sort of keep yourself in the type of condition that you want to be in so that when you go out there, you can be the best that you can, never drops as a priority to you. And so I could ask, like, how do you do that? But I'm sure part of your answer would be, I just make it happen. But practically speaking, is there anything that you do throughout the course of your week to where those things just are non-negotiables to you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good question. And we saw each other and talked at Mountain Tough Fest the other day in Bozeman, and you got to see me on my toughest station where the heat was really getting to me. I think we were doing burpees and holding a plate over the head. And definitely was getting to me in the heat, which is a good thing. It's such a good workout, man. Like I really like that community. I love what that Mountain Tough preaches, but yeah, man, I mean, it's just it becomes a way of life. It just becomes something that's part of you, and it is like discipline, and that discipline, it shows itself during hunting season, that discipline to keep going. And it's just I mean, backcountry hunting and hunting the way that I do means so much to me that it's just like I know that I have to get it in, and I know one day of running doesn't make the difference. And I will say, like, a lot of my training has been trail running, which does great for me. Like elevation is key for me, is climbing those mountains, and so I've really focused on that component of training throughout the years. And I've just been doing it so long that it does just feel natural. Like I do get the mental side of things, like it's a bit of therapy for me as well. To go running feels good. I'm doing something for myself. I'm like paying my dues towards hunting season, and I know that it'll show up during hunting season. There will be a time when I see a buck, and when you're in good physical fitness, like, you're also sharpening your mind. Like that discipline of making myself do it day in, day out, or 6 days a week, or whatever it is. It's like all of a sudden I get to season and there's no buck too far. There's no hole that a bull can go hide in that I can't pack him out of there. Like I just have such confidence and faith in my body and in my mind that it's strong that I know I can go do it. And so it's been like a huge key to my success over the years is just being like really physically fit and confidence in my body. And so I run really busy, but I just make time. I mean, before I jumped on here, I was just home 20 minutes ago and I'm doing my pull-ups and push-ups, and trail running's been a major part of my training. And I really believe like you kill bucks and bulls with your legs and your lungs. Like I've always believed that. Strong legs for climbing mountains and then good lungs to keep your wind and keep your breath and be able to recover. But lately, like the last couple years, I've also been trying to add strength and really been focused on my upper body for carrying a heavy pack so I don't twist my neck out or my back out on a hunt, so that I can pack a bull off the mountain from wherever it is. And I've always been able to step up and do that, have confidence in my body. But definitely lately, like I've put more pounds of muscle on my frame. And I haven't seen it hurt my trail running. I haven't, if anything, it's just helping me in the mountains. And so like I'm pretty proud of myself to add like probably like 8 pounds of muscle to my frame, 10 pounds of muscle to my frame, which I think is really helping me in the mountains. And I'm like an everyday guy. It's tough for me to work out 3 days a week. It's like, it's almost if I'm gonna do something, I just want to be at it every day. And so, I found that I just add these small layers of fitness to myself. Like I don't want to blow myself up where I can't work out for the next 2 days or my workouts suffer. Like I just want to go for a 6 to 10 mile run. My body recovers overnight. I feel normal tomorrow and I go run tomorrow. I just want to do my push-ups, my pull-ups, my dips, my kettlebell throws, like just something, just a half an hour of just working out, something that I can get in through the day. Doing my lunges and doing my squats with my pack on and getting used to that, just something that I can fit in. And so, man, it's like, I know none of us have a bunch of time and it takes so much effort and focus of our lives just to provide for our families and run a household. But it's just like, man, we can fit it in. It's like, even I find myself finding more time, like being more efficient with my time. Like in the mornings, I mean, to be honest, I was waking up and I was drinking coffee and I was looking at my phone and I was, kind of waking up and getting ready for my day before I got in my office. Well, I was wasting 45 minutes to an hour in the morning before I get started with my day. But instead, I can just get in my push ups, my pull ups. I can get in arrows through my bow. I can get this stuff in and I feel better after doing it. I feel good at the end of the day, laying my head down on the pillow, knowing that, I'm getting better every day. Like, even if you think of like you're just getting better, a percent, or like not even a percent, a tenth of a percent, you add that up over 365 days, and all of a sudden, you're 10% more effective than you were last season in the mountains. And so, like, just every day, like, I don't need to push it to these extreme levels where I'm running 4 hours a day or anything like that, but I can get in my half hour to hour days. And there's some days where I just don't have enough time and I barely fit in 20 minutes and I just go run on flat surface. I didn't even get in the elevation, but I got in something, and I got in my push-ups and pull-ups. Like, even if I was traveling watching my daughter play basketball, like, I'm the guy in the back of the gym that's doing my push-up workout in between games. Or like last weekend, we went to her games. I did my push-up workout in the morning before she played. They had a break in between games. I found a killer trail system over there in Butte, and I went and ran their trails up to their top of their M and around the big loop, and came in the gym just perfectly sweaty right as they were warming up for their second game with 3 minutes to spare. Like, I can fit it in. So I just have such a passion for backcountry hunting and want to be at my very best. So I just find a way day in, day out.
Yeah, I love that. That's so good. There's a quote that I love. Got it pinned on my board over here. And obviously, we work with people, like helping them with their nutrition, etc. And this is what I always try to live by: is I'd rather be consistently good than occasionally great. And I love that idea of, like, in a world where everybody's trying to optimize and all of these eyes is sometimes just hitting minimum effective doses over and over and over and over again accumulates to be this big change. And I think for a lot of folks, they feel like, well, I can't optimize, I can't prioritize, I can't do all of these things, and it sometimes just prevents them from ever really getting started. And a lot of times that is the catalyst. Just getting started is the catalyst, and then it grows from there. So I think that's great advice. I think it's awesome advice. A question I'd have, kind of that along the lines of what you had said, is how that translates into the confidence that you get from doing that, how it translates into, like, let's say a really high stakes hunt, for example, a once in a lifetime type of a deal, or you get a goat tag or you get a sheep tag. How does that confidence carry over into that, to where you want to be successful, but not psyching yourself out so much going into there to where you sabotage your success before you ever get on the plane to go over there?
Yeah, that's it's a really good question. It's and I love your quote, by the way. I'm going to use that. It definitely is consistency. Yeah, so man, I mean, it's wild because bow hunting's so multifaceted, right? It's like being in great physical shape is like not going to kill those animals alone. Like you also have to be good at your shooting. You have to be good at your scouting, good at your e-scouting. You have to have the mental strength, like the mental fortitude. And really it starts and ends in the mind. It's like you just decide who you want to be in life and what you want to be good at, and then you work towards it. And you might not get good in a week or a month or a year. Like for me, it's been a 20-year journey to get to where I'm at, to where I have that kind of confidence. And so it's so multifaceted, but I think you just want to be at your very best. And I think you want to put full effort in before you get there. So, you want to know the unit like the back of your hand. You want to have it memorized through your e-scouting. Like if you can work out a weekend, or work out a few days to scout the unit, to get in there and put boots to ground and find where a few bucks are hanging, to go in there during elk season, find where, or before elk season, and find where the cows are, find where the rubs are, where the water is, where are your good vantage points, where are you going to access from, like just knowing what to expect, and then, it's like, man, I mean, my physical fitness comes into play so much on these hunts. And so, just like I was saying, like have so much confidence in my body that I can do it day after day. I can have this exertion, not just one big day, like every day, 6 to 10 miles, 3,000 vert, 4,000 vert. So I know I'm going to put full effort in, and I can trust my body. And then, I've like sharpened my mind, like through all these workouts, you're like building discipline. And the same way I'm adding these layers of physical fitness on my body, like adding these layers of mental toughness on. Like every tough hunt that I've done, I pushed it like to my absolute limits. And sometimes it feels like mission impossible. It feels like there's no way I'm going to kill a buck or a bull. And it's day 7 or day 8. I haven't had a chance. But I just know if I continue putting forth full effort, like, I'm probably going to earn an opportunity, and then I've trained so much with my bow, and I'm good in the clutch. Like I've trained myself to be able to count on myself in those times. And so I know if I get a sliver of an opportunity, I can make it happen. And so just this inner belief that I've made it happen enough times. I know I've put in the training. I know I've done everything possible to set myself up for success. And then, it's like these skills come into play that I've sharpened for years, whether that's stalking skills or good decisions. Like I've really honed my bow hunting instincts. And so I think it's just this confidence where I've done it before and I know I can do it again. And if I put forth full effort and it doesn't happen, like those are some of my best, most memorable hunts, is when I've pushed it to the absolute limit and I did come up short. And you know what I do is like I go back to the drawing board. I work even harder. I pick myself up and I get back after it. And more times than not, I accomplish that goal the next season or the next hunt. And I might not be successful every hunt, but that hard work, that dedication, that perseverance, it'll show up throughout a season. Like even last year, I remember jumping on a podcast. I'd killed an antelope, I'd killed a goat, but I was really struggling during elk season. I had a film guy for 7, 8 days, 9 days or something. And I'd put in all this effort And I just hadn't got that lucky break yet. I remember jumping on the podcast and just being real authentic with my audience and just going, hey, here's the deal. Like, I'm putting forth full effort. I didn't get one on film. It's been tough. I've had a close call here and there. But you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to put my head down. And the only thing I know is to keep going, keep putting forth full effort. Every day I can get, every day I can be out there. And it wasn't but a few days and I had a good 6-point arrow. Like it just comes together through effort. And so I just believe in that wholeheartedly because I've seen it happen so many times. So I think that's like where my confidence comes from in the mountains.
If there were somebody who's brand new, right, just dipping their toe into this whole world, whether it's just the outdoors in general or hunting or whatever, any one tidbit piece of advice for someone that would say, okay, I'm brand new and I want that confidence, what's your like number one tip? And I know that that's probably really challenging to narrow down, but if somebody backed you into an elevator and said, give me one tip, what would it be?
I think just find your passion for it. I think experience is the best teacher. The more time you can spend in the field learning, the better you're going to get. It's extremely difficult. Just realize it's a long game, man. It may seem like mission impossible, but it can come together in a few seconds. All of a sudden you can find that bull and get your shot and come out on top. Or if it doesn't happen this year, you gain that experience to where you're set up better for success next season or on the next hunt. So I think it's just like find your passion and like it's going to be difficult. You're playing the long game and just keep after it. Like persistence is deadly, man. Just keep putting forth full effort, keep theorizing, coming up with those game animals are, and you're going to run into places with too many guys or boot tracks. You're going to run into places with no game. You're going to miss shots. You're going to like all like the only reason like why bow hunting treats you to the highest highs is because you also have the lowest lows. Like it is going to tear you down sometimes where you think, what the heck am I doing? And so I think you just have to ride those lows out and just like chalk it up to like, good experience and like just find the right reasons to do it, like the passion for it, the love for adventure, the challenge of trying to stalk these animals, knowing it's going to be difficult, but as you start to improve those skills, improve those instincts, as you get better and better, like you give yourself a better chance at success when you find that 6 point or when you find that 4 point buck. So I think it's just like follow your passion and like spend a bunch of time, try to keep your head up and just know that you're doing it because it is the adventure of it. The fun, like the fun is in the journey. It's like yeah, it's like not standing on top of Everest. It's fun. Like, sure, it's great to arrow a nice 6 point bull that I've worked so hard for all year long. Like, I cherish those moments. But really, it was the 10, 12 days leading up to it of grinding and close calls. And then there he is, and it happens. Like, that's the beauty of it. And so don't get too caught up in the success. Get caught up in the adventure and the passion and the love for it, being in wild places and being able to test yourself. Like, that's the real beauty of it.
All right, Brian. Well, I really appreciate you coming on. If people want to check out your stuff, I want to give you the chance to plug the course that you've got through Eastman's and really anything that you feel like might be helpful for people to check out.
Yeah. Thanks a bunch. I appreciate it. Thanks so much for having me on, man. Like, yeah, I really enjoyed chatting with you at the Mountain Tough Fest and also on the podcast. Like, you have great questions based around nutrition, and so, you're doing a great job for this community. And it's like, us guys, like we have all these tools nowadays, and if we can just tap into them and gain that 1% performance, that couple percent performance. I mean, at this point, I'm just looking for like percentages of percentages to get better, to give myself a better chance. So you're really doing a great job. I want to thank you for that. Um, yeah, it's yeah, you can definitely find me. I've got the podcast Eastman's Elevated. I do another podcast, Eastman's Bow Hunting Journal, Life of a Bow Hunter. I do that with my buddy Dan Picard. And we've been doing it now. We're in our second year, but that's a great podcast as well. So you can follow me for free there. We do have the Mule Deer Collective and the Elk Collective So it's like everything I know about hunting mule deer, hunting elk, everything I've gained in the last 20 years. And so like when I was young, my resources were like buying books and there wasn't this great resource of information and learning. And we're in the information day and age, but there's more people that are going hard that have this information. And so you have to put in the work to find that next level success. But yeah, that mule deer collective, elk collective, for the price of it, you can cut your learning curve by years just by going through the video format course. And so yeah, you can check that out through Eastman's. You were nice enough to mention the videos. The videos are strange, man. It's like when I first started doing them, I thought, oh, I'll do the coolest videos around. Like I do the coolest adventures. And then I'd get out there and I'd forget how to talk into the camera. I like wouldn't have the right scenes to be able to put it together. When I get home, I'd look at my footage and go, gosh, how in the heck am I going to make a film? But throughout the years, it's been something that I've really worked at, like storytelling. Also, like I try to have pertinent information, like where guys can learn from my hunts and see my strategy or what I'm doing. And same thing, I'm just like you, man. I'm like doing all the same things: public land, do it yourself, easy to draw tags, and just getting in there and trying to figure it out and then trying to document it all. So I've really worked hard at the video side of things. So yeah, you check out the videos, Eastman's Hunting Journals on YouTube. Those are free as well. And then yeah, the writing in the magazines: Eastman's Bow Hunting Journal, Eastman's Hunting Journal. So it's a mouthful, but yeah, I'm always doing a bunch in the outdoor industry, and partly because I love it so much.
Yeah, and you're just a tremendous asset to the hunting community. And so I'm going to link all of that I can in the show notes. So if people are interested, they can just go to the show notes, click on them, find them. They don't have to search for them. It should make it easier for them and great for you too. So appreciate it so much. I know you're busy. This is one more thing. And I kind of threw this at you through a mutual friend of ours, and you were gracious about the whole thing. So thank you for coming on, sharing your knowledge. We appreciate you, and good luck this season.
Oh, happy to, man. It's so nice to meet you. Yeah, keep in touch, and we'll do more in the future. So we'll talk soon.
I want to thank Brian for coming on. I know it was smack dab in the middle of a busy season for him as he makes his rounds to different camps and scouting trips and all of the obligations that he had. You heard us also reference a course that he puts on, videos that he's done, and other resources that he's had his hand in over the years. I'm going to link as many of those as I can in the show notes. So if you're interested, you can just click the link and it will take you directly there instead of having to search around. We appreciate you guys joining us this week and every week. If you have any questions you want us to sort through in our Q&A segments, questions on nutrition, general topics, just let us know. You can email us at info@b2pnutrition.com and we would be happy to do them. We'll be back again in a couple of weeks. Have a great week, everyone.